Hey, welcome everyone to the Soul Report Live. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, and joining me is my good friend and co-host Les Hubert, along with the wizard behind the curtain, our famous producer, Jack Balek. Tonight, with you, our curious audience, we explore the outer limits of consciousness once again, delving into the unseen realms of the soul, the mind, and the mystical forces that shape our lives.
If you like our presentation, please comment, share, subscribe, and like. Also, you can find us all over the media. You can find us on Instagram, on YouTube, on some of the other websites as well. Tonight, we're going to be covering spiritual concerns, news and views, mysterious and unexplained, and then we're going to be going to an open mic interaction with our audience. Doug, we want to know from you and your expertise what is the spiritual path and how to embark upon it.
Well, welcome everyone to the show. My good friend Les asked some pretty interesting questions. And this one, would you clarify it again? Say it one more time so everybody gets the import of what you just said.
Right. Well, what is a spiritual path and how to embark upon it?
There you go. So, a spiritual path is often referred to in many books. The path is important. The way we go, those people who are the way showers. I mean, this is all about the journey we take as a spiritual being while we're in a physical body. It's a very important question. It's somewhat not as much importance put upon it as it's often quoted, misquoted, or referred to in a frivolous or expanding way. The path, what is that? The journey, what is that? And how meaningful is it? How do we know we're on the path? Those are all questions that I'm sure float around in our heads until you get serious about it. And the spiritual path is a path of enlightenment. It starts off with you becoming more aware. In our podcast, The Wake Up, we talk about those things, about waking up spiritually. And as you begin to wake up spiritually, you begin to become aware that the world is a bigger place, that there's more to it, that you have five physical senses that you've been well aware of and you've had to learn and try to master all of your life. My tongue seems to be one I can't master. It always kind of misspeaks every now and then. But we do our best when we try to master the physical senses. But then we get to the sixth sense, that ESP, extrasensory perception. Then we find out about premonitions and precognitions, and then we have predictions, and we have prophecy, and then we have a dream. And the dream comes true. And we have all kinds of dreams that seem to be like this Chinese language when you don't speak Chinese. It seems to be something that you understand, but you don't. You can't say it, speak it, or completely understand what it is. But with practice, you begin to understand a few words and you begin to understand more about this amazing ability you have when you dream. The dream is your magic mirror. It's your way shower, actually, because as my teacher Ross Peterson told me once upon a time, there is absolutely nothing that goes on in your life that you have not first had a dream about.
Oh, wow.
In other words, you dream about everything in your life in advance. Now, I know, my friends, you're intelligent out there and you're wondering, how can that be? Well, when you sleep, you go into what's called the present moment. It's not linear, there's no time, there's no space. It's the present moment. It just is. It's the moment of thought. But as you begin to comprehend that no time and no space doesn't compute in the universal mind, then you begin to see that your mind can go forward in time and perceive things that are about to happen. There's the destiny, and then there's the probability, and then there are predictions, and then there are uncertainties, there are mistakes, there are errors, there are things that happen that weren't supposed to happen. But your dream is showing you the way. It's like a beam going through a forest or a jungle. You can see between the trees, but you can't see completely. And when you get up to that tree and you bump into it, you miss that one with the flashlight, but the beam is still showing you to continue on. And so the path is similar to that, but out of time and space. And as you continue on this journey, getting from where you are to where you want to go, and only you know where that place is. It's a longing. It's like you're a homing pigeon and you know you got to go home. You can feel it, you can sense it, but you don't have any reference points. So as you continue on the path, you achieve something. You move forward. You are finding your way back home, the place you left. It's like you took a trip and you got lost, and now you're trying to find your way back, spiritually speaking. And here's a saying that I've been saying for years, and it's now being picked up on the internet. I've heard some other people report it back to me. There are many paths up a mountain, but there's only one peak on the top of that mountain. And we're all migrating, finding our way, the different religions, the different frames of thought, the different circumstances and lifestyles, along a path similar to our friends and neighbors who are on the same path as us. But remember, individually we're on the path, but together. And then as we look at around this mountain, there are many paths, and they lead up to one peak, one truth, one finale, one homecoming. And when you get there, the thing to have is the wisdom to say, I don't need to know how I got here. I don't need to know what I did to get here. I just need to know I'm here. And when you do that, like the Buddha, like the Christ, and like all the other religious icons and spiritual masters from all the world's great religions, you have arrived. You have found your way. So back to down to the trenches. Okay, here we are, elbowing our way through the world, trying to find what? We know we're going to get to that peak somehow, but there's a whole lot of jungle, forests, valleys, rivers, rocks, boulders, pitfalls, and all kinds of things that are going to try to delay us and deter us. Knowing your way, threading your way through all those circumstances is the path. It's your journey. Mm-hmm. Once you can started out on the path and you don't stop, you keep on going, sooner or later you're going to arrive. And here's the ticket. This life is like one breath in the life of the soul. And if the soul lives forever, then there's no need to hurry. You can continue to take your steps in peace. And remember, you know the destination, and you want to get there in a hurry, which is a mistake, but you want to get there. Enjoy the traveling, enjoy the journey, as well as getting to the destination. But when you get to the destination, you don't need to know how you got here, what directions you took, what did you do right, what did you do wrong. You don't need to know anything. All you need to know is, I've arrived, I am here, and you are in peace. And so the path is the path. It's the steps you take. And here's the thing. Why are you making your life so difficult, my friends? Why are you taking the hard way? It's human nature to do so. It doesn't have to be. That's the wisdom you come to when you follow people like me or people who are better than me, who know more about the spiritual path, and you find your way and you understand, whoa, I don't need to walk down that river bank over those stones knee-high in ice-cold water and then climb up the other side. I can just walk across the bridge right over here. Why didn't I notice that earlier? And that's what your awareness and your self-realization comes to. Taking the time to find the easy way, which isn't really so easy. It's just a matter of choice. And as you get older in life, you begin to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to run headlong into this uncertainty, unknowing. I'm going to look for the path that someone else has taken. I'm going to try to follow that easy way. I'm going to take that nice soft path because I choose to do so. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to understand the restrictions. I'm going to understand the limits. I'm going to understand why it is a soft path. And I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I don't have to people please. I don't have to please some mythical authority above me. I have to please myself so that I am content. And as I take my steps, measured one after the other, I find my way with assurance, with peace, and with progression. In other words, you're not going to slip off the path. But if you do, you know you just have to climb back up the same way you slipped down, which is a little bit of a chore. I can admit that. But once you're on the path, if you tread carefully, it's a narrow path. Temptation, ego, aggrandizement, physical temptations of immense wealth or power or prestige or something that inflates you to be something in the material world different than that still small, peaceful, saintly soul inside. Those are all the distractions. Those are all the things that make you slip off the path. But again, when that happens, and more than likely it will happen, maybe once, twice, maybe 1,000 times, as long as you are willing to climb back on the path, then you can continue. If you stay where you are, sulking, feeling sorry for yourself, perhaps self-destructive, perhaps you feel a failure, perhaps you think you're being punished, you're going to stay there. And by your own hand, you have to pull yourself up. And when you get back on the path, you go like, okay, I'm here. I don't need to know what happened. I'm going to keep on going. And that tenacity, that's wisdom. That's will and free will applied. And that is the most important anyone can have, Les, that they willfully want to go down the path. No one's going to get in their way. No one's going to stop them. And they just continue taking their steps. And eventually you get through that low-lying land and you get onto the hills. And then from the hills, you go up the bigger hills. And from the bigger hills, the side of the mountain. And from the side of the mountain up to the peak. And when you get to the peak, the view is magnificent. You can see everywhere. But as you're making that ascent, you begin to be aware around the mountain. You begin to see further in the distance. And that's called self-realization, awareness. So that when you get to the peak, it's not a surprise. It's like, here you are. So these words I've just spoken in an impromptu way is encompassing many of the, let's call them the trials and tribulations we take of being on the path. Naturally, intelligent people like our audience are wondering how to get to the peak. And I'm saying, know there's a peak. Know there are many ways up it. So if other people are taking a way through Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist, Jewish, Christian, whatever religion they're in, native Indians, native Aboriginal people, ancient views like the Kahuna in Hawaii, whatever their path is, it's still leading to the same place. We won't get distracted by other people's preferences. And we won't impose our beliefs on anyone else, nor will we allow other people's beliefs to be imposed upon us. You can agree with anybody but have mental reservations, and that's not being honest with yourself. But if you continue taking those steps through those difficulties, what are you doing, my friends? You are becoming a saintly person. Continuing on the path, you will become aware, self-aware. Then you'll become realized, and then you'll become fully realized. And then you will become a divine being called an avatar, which is a fully self-realized, awoken person, that's wide awake person, in a spiritual sense, while living in a physical body, enjoying the most pleasurable experience one can possibly have as a human being with a fully awakened soul. That's our goal. But it's going to take baby steps to get there. Don't run. You might trip. Watch your step. People will also dissuade you and they'll tell you to go different directions. Keep your eyes on the mark. Keep moving forward and listen and develop your intuitions, those other awarenesses that you have. You know, we have an awareness not too many people talk about. Close your eyes and put your hand around your body. You know where it is in space, even though you can't see it. That is another awareness that you have that's not readily adapted or mentioned about, but it's true. You know when you put your hand somewhere where it is,
Right. Yeah.
even though you can't see it.
Yeah.
So see how you master that awareness. There you go. That's the short version on how to get from here to there.
Well, some people think that because we've incarnated, that we're on a spiritual path already, and yet, how can we realize that we are on a path, or do we have to say to ourselves, "I want to take a spiritual path"?
No, first of all, it doesn't matter what you say. You're on a path. Your soul has decided it's a big spiral out in space. I've seen it. You jump on that spiral and you end up at the bottom where you are right now, inside your physical form.
Oh,
So, are you aware what that was before? How many people out there right now even remember jumping on that big circular spiral slide, if you will, to get down to where they are in this body? You probably don't. You might remember it now that I've mentioned it. You might have a dream about it. You might think I'm suggesting it. You are in my power, but that's not true. The point being is you are remembering a real situation and experience you've had. So the soul decided, I want to be Les. My soul said, I want to be Douglas. It decided when to enter, what family it was going to jump into, what body it was going to take on, the one we're in right now, and all the other circumstances that are peripheral to our life. The worst I've ever heard is somebody saying, I never asked to be born. And I go, oh, yes, you did. My mother and father have to take care of me for the rest of my life. It's their fault, not mine. Oh, no, it isn't. It's your fault, meaning your responsibility. And so those people are in for a big surprise when mom and dad pass away and they have to take care of themselves, but that's a different story. So the point being is that did you choose to be here? Yes, you did. And why are you here? The soul has come for purposes of its own design, of its own need, to experience this life as whatever race you belong to, whatever birth order you entered into, whatever environment the family was involved in, whatever circumstances you found yourself in. And every 10 years, there's a major spiritual lesson to be learned. And every year, there are little lessons to be learned. They come randomly. Have you ever noticed that things are going along real good and all of a sudden, bam, wow, what happened? Or, oh my God, I can't get out of here. It's terrible. And somebody steps in your life and says, let me help you up. And your life completely changed. In a moment, your life can change. And that's why you should always have hope. Now, you're not abandoned. God provides everything. We just have to learn how to use what's being provided. That's the trick. But the point being is that you've you've incarnated in this life as this person. This body is who you are, and once it's gone, it will be gone. Your name will be remembered, and that's it. But your soul will continue on to the next experience. I know people are saying religion is this or that, reincarnation is this or that. And the thing is, who knows the mind of God?
right.
No one. It's impossible for a teeny tiny little finite mind to even comprehend the infinite mind of God. So let's not try. Let's just say, okay, I was born here. I'm here. I believe I have a soul. By the way, if you don't believe you have a soul, then everything we're saying doesn't matter. You don't have to convince me that you're an atheist or whatever. It doesn't matter if you believe you're an atheist. God will remember you, but you may not find out God until you get there and say, oh my God, I think I was wrong. But that's another story. The point being is, my friend, is that you are who you are right now. Your soul is that part of you that is of God and from God and is immortal, and it continues. And if you believe that, then you can say and accept the idea, if my soul chose to enter here in the same manner and description as I just described from the post existence, when I die and throw off the clay and I go into the past existence, sorry, I got it mixed up. In the pre existence, you came into the world, and now in the post existence, you're going back into the heavens above. Why can't you do it a second time,
Right.
or a third time, or a fifth, or a hundredth, or a thousandth time? Because there's so much to learn here. When you get it right and you find that mountain peak, it may have taken you 1,000 lifetimes. Maybe it only took you 100. Maybe it's taking you 5,000 lifetimes. It doesn't matter. It's that you arrived, that all that matters. So the idea of having previous experiences, logical. If you believe the soul chose this body and it's going to choose when to leave, then why can't it choose when to come back? You know, if you're poor now, to experience the flip side of that, you will be wealthy in the next lifetime. Or if you've been wealthy in the previous lifetime, and perhaps you've been a little abusive of that, you might end up being really poor in this lifetime. Opposites attract like, and consequences for your actions exist in this life and in the next life. In this life, in the physical world, and in the next life, or the spiritual world. There are always consequences. And that's one of the reasons to avoid slipping off the path.
So whether we like it or not, we are on a spiritual path because we're spirits having a human experience, correct?
Absolutely right, Les. That's why we as souls decided to come down here in this crummy place we call the world. It's like, oh my God, I had to go in the sweatshop to learn how to manufacture things, or I had to go into the wood shop and get covered with sawdust to know that I didn't like it. So yes, we're spiritual, whether we're on a journey or not. I mean, people have said to me in the past, Douglas, it's unfair. It is totally unfair. If you know you are a soul and you are aware of the spiritual world and God, it's not fair to me. I don't know anything about that.
Sure.
Of course they do. They just don't remember what it's like. They haven't worked with themselves through meditation and contemplation and developed themselves spiritually. It's like they said, I want to ride a bicycle. And we say, okay, there's one. This is how you do it. Brakes on the handle, pedals, wheels, just ride down the road there. And the person gets on and pop, they fall. What happened? Well, you got to learn how to balance the bicycle. Well, you never told me about that. Well, you wanted to ride the bicycle. You saw other people riding it. Figure it out. I can show you everything about the bicycle. We all can, one to the other. But we cannot teach each other how to balance that bicycle. And that's the same thing about spiritual awareness. We can talk about it. We can demonstrate it. We can sit in yoga positions, or we can do strange exercises. We can do serious breathing techniques. We can develop ourselves through very different types of meditation. I teach the quantum meditation method, and each to its own finds its right way, but it's the person doing it. And that awareness, that effort, allows the person to become aware of their spiritual journey. And once that happens, once you get it, oh, what a relief. It really is true. The first time you have a dream about the future and it comes true, are you afraid? Or are you relieved? Are you amazed? Or are you saying, that was just subconscious suggestion? You're in my power. Okay. The point being is, no, it's your waking up. It's like a kitten, when kittens are born, for those people who may not know, they're born with their eyes closed. They can't see. And it takes a while, a couple of weeks, until the kittens can open their eyes. But
Right.
for all of that time they were born until that moment of revelation, they have a different concept of what the world is. They know if they wiggle their nose over here in Mummy's belly, they're going to get fed. And they know if these other warm little things bumping around them, if they can elbow their way around, they can move around in the litter and get around the basket. But wonder what it's like with all of a sudden one day, like you open your eyes and, oh my God, look at the world is all different than what I thought it was. That is what spiritual awakening is all about.
Hmm.
All of a sudden you come out of the darkness and everything you thought was the truth all of a sudden is gone. You're
Hmm.
seeing for the first time the reality of where you are, your experience, and you are awakened. Think about that. That
Hmm.
analogy of kittens waking up is exactly what people have in their spiritual sense when they become aware. Of course, after they become aware, they want to know everything, right? They're running
Hmm.
off to see the gurus in India. They're sitting in sweat baths or lounges here. They're taking courses. They're reading books. My book, the New Earth book, by the way, is one you should read, my friends. And so they're reading everything and they're thirsty.
Hmm.
They're running down the path.
Right. Right.
Uh-oh, they're going to slip. And when they do, and they find out they've been misled or they're on the wrong path or something, if they stop, they might stop for the rest of their life. And that would be a waste. But the others who are aware say, okay, just a minute, this stuff's off, this stuff here. Okay, now where was I? That is the person I want to teach. That is the person who has wisdom. That is the person that is truly on the path.
So the sooner we wake up to the fact that we are on a spiritual path, the better.
Yeah, and you're going to, by the way.
Really?
Ignorance is bliss, I guarantee you. It was in the book of, I think the New Testament, I think it was Luke, where the Master Yeshua the Christ was talking to his disciples, and he said, you know, I'm your rabbi, I'm your teacher. I've taught you many things. And they all went, oh, yes, Master, thank you, we are so grateful. Then he said, but now that I've taught you the truth, you are condemned by it.
Oh boy.
Once you know better,
Yeah, you can't go back.
can't, you can't weasel out of that one. Excuse me. Ignorance is bliss, but sooner or later you get bored. You know, you get bored. So you take the next step, you take the next risk.
Well, thank you, Doug. For our listening audience, if you like what you're seeing, please comment, share, and subscribe. Uh, and also, you can find us again on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and other formats. We're going to be taking a short break and we'll be coming back with news and views that are going on right now. I don't know if you're aware of this, Doug, but there's something very exciting going on. They've been using artificial intelligence and our modern computerizing technology to come up with it's called estimating the circulation and climate of the ocean, or what they call ECHO, ECCO. It's very, very exciting. We've never seen this technology before, and it's been able to chart the ocean's currents entirely over the entire planet. It's very, very exciting. We're discovering things that we haven't even seen before. Uh, there are rivers upon rivers upon rivers within the oceans themselves. And we're also discovering how climate change and global warming are affecting these currents. Do you get any feelings about what you think is going to happen with this technology? Is it really going to help us or just going to continue to, because some people say, wow, that's really interesting, but what do you do with it?
Well, in my new book, okay, it's called The New Earth. We talk about Earth changes. I wrote this in 2011. It's full of predictions about Earth changes, and I'm just going to give that a plug because it is a book everybody should read. My website's douglasjamescottrell.com, my whole name.com, and that book is available. It is a primo book about predictions of Earth changes. And what you are examining tonight, what we're having a look at on the show, is going to things that I've been very interested in since the mid 1970s. One of my mentors, or a man I have great respect for, would be Edgar Casey, a great and wonderful man, master, if you will, who was well known for his ability to see intuitively inside people's bodies, but also to talk about events in the world, earth changes and continental drift, etc. He had predicted that the world is coming up to another collapse, another earth changes that are going to be so severe. Uh, I've extrapolated that with my teacher Ross Peterson, who was one of the also called the new Edgar Cayce in his book. I think it's still some copies out there on the internet, and he was an amazing fellow. And he too was talking about Mount Etna and Mount Vesuvius going off and volcanic eruptions and things happening in Japan, and to the point that there would be, let's call it, continental drift, continental changes or shifts. Nostradamus had predicted that people in the future will all be concerned about talking about the weather, and they were overly concerned about the weather, and he couldn't figure that out in his intuition or vision. So it wasn't too long ago that I had a vision. Well, it was a long time ago, and I was on CFRB in Toronto with the host Richard Serrett, and I had a vision that the Earth's core was heating up and spinning at a different speed than the crust.
Oh, wow.
So, we think of it as an orange, everything spinning. No, the inside of the core was going slower than the outside of the crust. Now, I might have them, backwards here, but this is to get the point. It's like the skin of the orange was slipping around the orange fruit inside.
Oh.
So the friction of that with the changes, I remember challenging Dr. David Suzuki on the air that day. I said, prove me wrong. Have a look at this. This is amazing. This would have been in the middle of 1978, maybe somewhere in that time. In any event, that of course didn't go anywhere with that open air challenge. But later on, scientists have come forward and said, oh, it's natural. The Earth's core spins at a different speed than the crust. Nobody knew that until just a few years ago. So where I'm going with this is to say that what's the closest to the Earth's core substance that we have? And that, my friends, is the deep, dark ocean bottoms. There are, in these maps, you could see there are canyons, there are currents, rivers flowing around the bottom of the ocean. Remember, the top of the ocean, water doesn't weigh too much, but it's 65 pounds per square foot, down, 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 down. I don't know how many, 2,000 feet. That's a lot of weight at the bottom of the ocean. And so you have these canyons and abyss, and then you have the currents moving slowly at great pressure and at great depth. And of course, at temperatures that are different from the top to the bottom. The farther you go, the colder it gets. At least it used to be. Now, the farther you go, the warmer it gets because the oceans are being heated up from the bottom up. And I've been challenged about this, and I've been on Coast to Coast radio several times talking about this with the host there, that greenhouse gases aren't the problem. The Earth's core and the heat coming from the center of the Earth is the problem. What is it doing? It's heating up. It's heating up the oceans. And as the oceans continue to be increased in their temperature, disaster is happening. I predicted a 4 Celsius degree increase. 4 degrees Celsius of the oceans increasing. And of course, I was chastised for that. That couldn't be. Well, now it's 4 degrees or more, because by increasing the temperature 1 Celsius degree would be really bad. 2 would be absolute disaster. 4 degrees is unbelievable disastrous activities. And the ocean currents speed up. There's reports of deep sea creatures being found at the top.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
whales are moving. The
Yeah.
sharks are coming inland. The sharks are even coming down some of the streams and rivers, which is at one time was unheard of. Why is that? Because it's too hot down there. They can't survive. And so, as the oceans heat up, what happens to our atmosphere? What
Yeah.
happens to the jet stream? They start to go hurricanes, and then we have tornadoes, and then we have tsunami. What are we having? The Earth's oceans are starting to rock in their basins because the planet is starting to rock on its axis.
Mm.
Edgar Cayce was one of the first prophets in modern times to say that the Earth will flip on its axis.
Right.
And I go, oh my God, I hope where I live here ends up in some tropical place and not like the North Pole, because, excuse me, in the past, when I was a young guy, there were stories about giant mammoth, woolly mammoth beasts in Greenland found frozen solid, but they still had dandelions or food in their mouth.
Yeah, it was in their belly preserved. They hadn't even had a chance to digest it yet.
That's because what? Ice caps, minus 50 degrees Celsius. And there is the the warm tropical climate over here where the woolly mammoth is having his lunch. And in a moment, he goes from here to here under the minus 50 degrees Celsius
Right.
atmospheric
Yeah.
temperatures because the atmosphere is not going to move, just the planet. And that's why those beasts froze solid in minutes,
Yeah.
in my humble opinion. And I thought about that before I was in high school, actually. Always wondering, thinking, how could that happen? So, what's happening today? Ice caps, they're melting. Oh my gosh, let's shut down the carbon CO2 stuff. Let's look about the greenhouse gases. No, 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 no. The earth is heating up from within. And once those stabilizing caps, north and south, those polar caps melt, the planet's going to start to wobble. It already is.
Yeah. Matter of fact, they've even said that the North Pole doesn't add up with the line up with the North Star anymore. So we have to use GPS now for navigation.
That's right. And it used to be somewhere between 5 and 15 degrees off north for magnetic purposes for people flying planes. Now it's as much as 40 degrees or more. And again, our friends in Norway, when I was there, told me that, look, the stars are going south, which means the planet is tipping from where it normally is.
Mm.
So about these currents, think about the weight of all this water on the Earth's core, which I don't know how many miles it is thick. 2 miles, 6 miles, 10 miles, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm not that good on geography. But my thoughts are the same as, again, I'm going to flash my book here. This New Earth book talks about those occurrences, safe places to live, disastrous things that are going to happen. I've seen a whole continent come up east of Argentina. I've seen a landmass come up in the Bering Strait. I've seen the continent of Africa shrink. I wondered how that was possible. How could the whole continent shrink? I was out in space looking back at the planet in my vision. And then a person from Nairobi was here, and I asked him, is it possible that the continent of Africa could shrink? Because we had said that the oceans were going to rise.
Mm.
And he said, oh, yes, all around the continent of Africa is this shelf. And it was only about 5 meters high all around the continent. So if the oceans rise, what's going to happen? Well, the water will come up and it'll shrink around the coastline, and my vision will come true.
Wow.
So these things that are happening are the currents are increasing because the earth is heating up from the bottom. And if you heat something up in a pan, that water moves around. And this is
Yep.
what's going on right now. And with that movement, think about the pressure on
Mm.
the continents. It's pushing the continents apart. It's pushing down and it's being heated up.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having more volcanic activities now, because the crust is actually pulling apart.
Mm.
I
Mm.
believe there's an astrological influence too. The planets are lining up. You know, everybody goes like, "Whoa, look at this! The planets are in almost a straight line."
Mm.
That's significant, not for astrological purposes or astrology purposes, but for the idea, the gravitational pull. The planets are all lining up. So where is the Earth, teeny tiny little bubble that it is? Is
Right.
it in the middle of these gravitational pulls? What happens if it gets in front of the sun? I'll use my microphone here. What happens if this is the sun and this is the planet Earth right here, and then all the other planets are lined up like this way? What a
Wow.
pull that's going to be.
Yeah. That's incredible. Wow. Well, it's exciting because they're able to confirm all these ocean currents are being affected by the heating up of the ocean. Um, so, if, in your opinion, the rotation difference is that, in your opinion, is that a natural occurrence, or what do you think's going on? Is it because we've taken too much oil out of the planet, or something like that? Or
Oh, yeah, there's lots of theories about that. I mean, our friends in the Middle East are now building skyscrapers. They're getting involved in housing developments and electric cars and all kinds of things like never before. Why? Because they're running out of oil and
uh,
crude oil and all the derivatives like gasoline and natural gas.
oh
So,
wow,
yes, we're running out of it. And think about the wobbling effect that's having, right? We're imbalancing it, plus all the mining we're doing.
mm,
You know, when you first, think, look at those big scoopers and trucks and mines. Oh my gosh, they're
yeah,
making aluminum and they're making steel. Yeah, but somehow this is a sphere spinning in space, and we're gobbling it up, eating it up. What's going to happen?
mm,
Well, we're going to gobble up all the stuff here from, let's say, Europe, and then we're going to put all that stuff over here in Brazil, uh, or Manhattan. We're going to put a lot of steel up. What's going to happen? Wobble, wobble, wobble. But
yeah,
the big thing is the Earth is resilient. We are not, and the planet is going to spin out of its own rotation. The sun will, as other people have seen, the sun will rise in the west and set in the east. Several people have had that.
wow,
Edgar Casey predicted that when the oceans rise, that there are places that are now above water will be underwater, and what did he call it? Moss and fern will grow in places that never did before, which
right,
means something's going down, something's coming up. Atlantis, yes, Atlantis is going to pop up. And we're seeing more discoveries now when people are going underwater, or they have this technology to look down in the water and decide whole cities are down there.
wow,
And they look in the Amazon and the Mayan civilizations, and they're able to look through the jungle, and they're seeing all kinds of temples and cities. It was hugely populated. And there was a young fellow who figured out by the constellations in the sky that these cities were built in similar form or place as a map would be of the sky. I forget the
mm.
man's name. We had him on our show once on the Blog Talk, or we talked about him, I should say.
Was
We
that
didn't,
Was that
oh,
Dr. Shock?
I can't remember, but he was a
He's
young man when he figured it out. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, matter of fact, our good friend George Seferiadis knew him. He had him over his house at the time, and he mentioned how some of the structures were aligned with constellations above. Um, but thank you, Doug, for that dissertation. It's very interesting. Is there anything we should be? Is there anything they can do to stop this? I was reading the other day that the magnetic North Pole is now somewhere in the middle of the Bering Sea. So, is there any way we can thwart this, or just get ready for a big change?
Well, we're like fleas on the back of a dog. Wherever the
Right.
dog goes, we go. Okay. And we can't control too much. The
Right.
last vision I had, not too long, maybe a couple of years ago now, was that people were trying to get underneath the magnetic lines coming down on the North Pole.
Hmm.
Like anybody, there's a magnet, the magnetic lines come in the north, they go out the bottom, and they circle around. So the people were trying to run around on solid ground, which was bare, no snow,
Okay.
brownish in color. So I'm going to say earth. And they were trying to get under where the North Pole would be so they could be right under this down let's say, downward motion of magnetic flux. And they were running around trying to find it.
Hmm.
Now, currently, the North Pole is in Canada. And there is no ground under the North Pole. There's just ice. The North Pole is on solid ice. So
Okay.
if the ice melts, there's no ground. But in my vision, the people were running around on a solid landmass. Could that be Greenland?
Oh,
Could
wow.
it be someplace else? But there were no buildings, no plants, no structure. And they were running around. There were 5 or 6 of them, and they were spread out, and they were trying to find where the exact spot where the North Pole was coming down. For whatever reason, that game was being played, but the vision was showing me that the North Pole is going to wobble, but it will be
Mhm.
over some stable piece of land or continent
Hmm.
like Greenland. So what can we do about it? Here we go. Move inland from the coastlines. Be prepared. Be self-sufficient. Have some precious metal coins or whatever for barter or trade. Have a food supply that will last you 18 months or so. Whatever our current friends who are attuned to stocking up, like I'm not going to say their names, but different religious groups have had a storehouse of food for 6 months, then they expanded to 12 months. Now it's 18 months or beyond. So be self sufficient, to own your own property, and to have a group of people to come together, like a big family, a tribe, a village. And that's why we called our previous show the Global
Global
Village,
village,
is
yeah.
because we are all on this planet together.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how we're going to overcome this and survive it. We got to get past 2028, 2033 to 34 is where we start to come back to some normalcy. But how do we do it? Read books, listen to our show here on the Soul Report Live. We'll be talking more about it as time goes on. And we'll get some guests on here that are going to tell us the scientific background to what you and I have been talking about for a long time, what we're talking about tonight. We have to protect ourselves, be
Right.
prepared for more extremes. And if you're prepared, like the Boy Scouts say, you can handle anything. And you'll
Right.
have dreams or visions where to move to. But we're in for some tough times in the next 4 to 6 years.
Okay, Doug. We'll be back right after this short break with the mysterious and unexplained. So, Doug, we've been seeing a lot of worldwide UFO activity. Matter of fact, we had a very unusual sighting that took place just one state over from me in Massachusetts. It was broad daylight, and a woman filmed it from her backyard with her phone. And it was not an aircraft of our design. It was also very quiet, and it came down. And you'll see as it's coming down, it starts to slow its descent. If that were a drone, it would have been making a lot of noise. Or if that was a helicopter, as you know, you're an aircraft guy. It was totally silent, and she said she thought it was actually at first it was on fire, but you can see it's blinking. It's coming down slow. It has a very unusual setup, and this has been taking place all over the world right now. We've been seeing these very strange aircraft. Sometimes they see flying humanoids. They look like people in spacesuits just hovering up in the sky. What is your take on what is going on? Are we to be expecting something, or do these beings know what's going on, or what's your take on this, Doug?
I'm assuming that uh, once she saw this come down, it didn't go back up.
Yeah, she thought there was going to be an explosion, like it was an aircraft about to crash, and she said nothing, nothing. And she said, then after that, I lost sight of it, and she never saw it again.
Okay, well, I'm not a ufologist. I never have been, but I've been aware of such things. When I was in Hamilton, Ontario, one day, myself and 10 other friends, one was a air traffic controller from Europe, and we saw an orange orb come out of the center city of the city of Hamilton, and we went, "What's that?" And then a second one came up and joined up with the first one, so they're now flying in formation, pilot and wingman.
Wow.
And we went, "Look at that!" And then a third one came up, and a fourth one, and the third and fourth formed up like they were pilot and wingman. And then guess what? All four of them joined up like you would see a normal four-plane jet formation. They took
Wow.
off straight, and then they just went in their separate ways. And we were all stumbling for our cameras because at that point in time we didn't really have uh, cell phone cameras. And lo and behold, we missed it. But several people all over made reports of seeing these orange orbs that were coming up from the center of Hamilton, which would have been about King Street and, I guess, King and James Street. That was it. Because I would see the area from, we're up on the bluff, we're way up high, and so that area would be in that close proximity. And several people even recorded it, and there was something on YouTube. I have not seen it, but I believe there's something out there. So, what is my take on it? I had a vision once, and I'm going to say it now. I haven't really publicly disclosed this before, but I saw a ring of smoke appear in the sky. And it looked like somebody, who would be smoking cigars and they would have a puff smoke ring, if you will.
Hmm. Right.
Somebody later on told me that was a Stargate. I didn't
Whoa.
know it at the time. But in that moment, I could see vehicles coming through the smoke ring or Stargate. They were
Wow.
like the size of aircraft carriers, one behind the other. They were
Wow.
like a train of aircraft carriers, moving really slow. And I wondered, what's the Army going to do about this? And then I said, nothing. I can't do anything about this. And something else went on, and I woke up. And so that was as clear a vision as any. And because I'm accustomed and experienced to tell the difference between fantasy, a willful dream, this was real as if it was happening in real life, like you and I are talking right now.
Hmm.
So I don't know what this was, but I saw it coming down, and it seemed to have boosters on it to slow its descent. In other words, the flashing lights were flashing towards the ground. Let's have another look at that, Jack, if we can. And you'll see the lights flashing forward, and it looks like it's slowing down in its
Yeah. It
descent,
was actually, it started to slow its descent as it came down. And
which,
she said it made no sound, no audible sound at all. She just happened to look up and thought it was a flaming aircraft about to come down crashing. I wonder if Jack can find that again.
yeah, but it was slowing down.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, definitely. So it
and
was under conscious control. Here it
yeah,
is. Yeah, here we go.
you watch, it's flashing, and
Yep,
see it's flashing towards the front, not towards the flame in the back.
yep. And you'll see it's actually slowing down, and it's like it's coming in for a landing.
Yeah.
And made no sound. It was totally silent all the way down.
And so that would be similar, but in reverse, to what we saw in Hamilton, Ontario. Although in Hamilton, Ontario, it would be an orb. We didn't see the vehicle that's connected between the flames in the back and the nose, which seems to be, I guess you would say, heated up from friction, from atmospheric friction. So we saw the reverse where it was going up and under control. That thing's under control. It wasn't falling.
Yeah.
Uh,
And drones make up. I mean, we see drones here all the time, and they're very loud because they have the propellers. That thing, it was totally silent. So, but we've been seeing these things all over the planet. I mean, countries have been. You go online and they've been saying, "Yeah, we saw one here." What is going on? It's like, what's happening? Why is we having this mass sighting? It's usually when they have a wave of sightings. It's usually in a specific area, like Montreal or Rhode Island. It's like seems to be all over the planet now for some reason.
well, certainly it's the time for them to arrive. If all over the planet we're beating each other up with wars and atomic bombs and the threats of atomic bombs or nuclear reactors going off, uh, you could call this the expedition force. This is the recon guys coming down here, speaking in military terms. They're just reconnoitering what's what, where to where, and they could very well be putting up beacons or listening devices or something else. I'm not trying to alarm anybody. I'm being a little speaking in jest here, but certainly if this is no hoax, and it doesn't appear to be one,
Oh,
then it has to be that we're being visited. And certainly, if I had a dream about a Stargate opening up and huge craft the size of aircraft carriers floating through, like
Yeah.
there was nothing on the other side of the smoke ring, right? That came through, it appeared. Then this could be the, what do you call those guys? The advanced force, that go out and they reconnoiter, like the
Yeah,
rain
yeah, recon. Yeah, the recon guys. Yeah.
recon guys. There we go. So we're going to leave this one open for more discussion, but my impression is I've had a vision of something that came through a smoke ring or a Stargate, and other people have had similar visions of the same. Certainly, we invite our listeners, viewers, to send in the chat their experiences, and we'd love to hear from them and see what they've experienced. Because
Yep.
again, there's three things that cannot be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And if people all over the planet in short order are seeing the same thing, well, by logic, this must be really happening.
Yeah.
Of course, they're not going to announce, now hear this, now hear this. It's
Mm,
going to be quietly coming down. And
mm,
maybe that's why we're going to see some catastrophes that we'll call catastrophes, where military installations, rocket ships, or aircraft that are designed for war may have mishaps.
mm.
Not
Yeah.
because they're mishaps by our means. I'm just throwing this out there because it comes to my mind now that they're having mishaps because of helpful hands preventing us from blowing ourselves up again.
Mm,
We're in enough trouble already with the planet wobbling, volcanic activities increasing, earthquake activity at an accelerated rate happening to major fault lines around the planet. My friends, listen to this. When you see Mount Everest erupting, which it has done most recently several times, and Mount Vesuvius, which is just next door in Sicily, if you see those two going off at the same time, this is Edgar Casey's great prediction that this is the countdown for things to happen in Japan, in South America, and in Japan that signal,
California too. Yeah, California.
and California.
Yeah.
This is the time we ought to be, hunkering down with extra batteries, some more canned food, and making sure we're in a safe place.
Right. Well, thank you, Doug. That's very interesting. Yeah, if for our listening audience, if you have any video you want to send in of some strange sightings, that would be really interesting to look at.
Yeah,
Now we're going to go to the open mic. We're going to take some questions, and we have two questions here. One from, and this too shall pass. Their question is: when having to pick from two great choices, I often get decision paralysis and delay making a choice because both are great and don't want to exclude one, but I must. How do you deal with this dilemma?
well, you get your lucky coin out. Heads I win, tails I lose. This is unfortunately how life comes. I could say I could get 100 men and women lined up and say, "Have you ever had this experience?" And they'll all agree. Uh, and I usually pick wrong. I don't know why, but I pick wrong. So when two things come to you, you have to contemplate what is that fine line. One might be fake, and the other might be true. One might present itself better, and the other lesser, but the lesser one might be the right one.
Hmm.
So sleep on it. The best is to say the way your way your soul mind works is it will not make a decision for you because you have free will and free choice.
Right.
Otherwise, it's no purpose of it piggybacking through your life and observing what you're going through. I know that's a profound statement, and we can deal with the implications of that at another time. But you write down, okay, tomorrow I'm going to take A, absolutely A. That's it. That's my decision. I'm going to sleep on it. And then you wake up and you say, no, no, B was the right one. Okay. So you get a little extra nudge from your high self or intuition which one to take. But
Hmm.
it's really hard, and that's how it is in the world. You have two choices almost always because we live in a world of duality. And in
Right.
this duality, we have to decide, for what's best. So You could
Right.
make a list. This comes to my mind now. Make a list of all the advantages for A, all the advantages for B, and see which one has the most advantages. I cannot tell you what is the right way. I can only tell you that it is consistent, that this happens in life,
Oh yeah.
and how to
Yep.
everybody can relate to it. So it's a good question. It's an appropriate question. And my advice is don't rush into it and put yourself in the situation. Okay, if I did A, what are all the benefits? What are the not so benefit? And the vice for B. And then sort of say, okay, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to do A. And then sleep on it and see what happens.
Mm. That's what I do. I sleep on it. And I have a saying to myself, patience is my best friend. If I don't rush it and I sleep, and I learned that from my grandfather. And it really does help you for some reason. Why is it? You wake up with this like, eureka, I know the answer. Why is that, Doug?
Because your mind has been outsourcing the universe above, going to that level of consciousness. Let's say you want to know how to fix the car, so you went to the dimension where all the mechanics are, and you talked over the situation with these mechanics in spirit. And one of them came out and said, "Yeah, I had that same problem. If you go and you clean out that little valve, it's going to work perfectly." And you wake up and you go like, "Oh, why didn't I think of that before?" You go out, clean up the little valve, poof, it works. So we do have this extra help and above. But we have to, as you say, be patient. It's if two wonderful things are there, it's not going to go away.
Mm, mm,
So I
true.
can't say try one out and wait and say I'm going to try A and then I'm going to and then if that doesn't work, I'm going to go to B because you'll be more confused. So the best is to be patient and be disinterested in what the decision is, and you'll make the right
Oh,
one.
okay. We have one more question from Larry Cruz. He says, I have a question. Why is it when I meditate, I see in my mind random people, dark figures, phrases, and sometimes I would see things or items spinning slowly, then fading away?
Because you're not in your mind, Larry. You're out on another level of consciousness, another plane of thought, and you're viewing the beings that live there. You're viewing the environment there. And you might be also moving through levels of, levels of thought or planes of consciousness.
Mm,
I mean, many of the world's great religions have several heavens. The Christians, we have three heavens. In the Mormons, they have five. In the Hindu, they have 15
mm,
or 108. I'm a little confused on that. So the idea is if you look at the Earth as the starting point and you do concentric or circle rings or parentheses above representing the different levels of consciousness, then these things that you're viewing are not in your mind. They're in those levels of consciousness, and you're viewing the beings that exist there, or the thoughts that exist there, or the consciousness that exists there. That's why you're seeing sometimes beings and sometimes symbols and sometimes numbers. If you look to our friends in the mosques, their mosques are always geometrical masterpieces. Why? Because in that consciousness there is all the formulas and geometrical shapes have been I don't want to say discovered, are in existence. We're just discovering them, and that's a representation of that dimension. Every dimension has a various difference, and the higher you go through these levels of consciousness or planes, you're going up that mountain, and you'll get to the top where you'll be in the Christos or unconditional love. But Larry is the publisher of the amazing new a newsletter called the Sacred Scroll newsletter, and you can see that, my friends. If you want to sign up, and I encourage you to do so, you can go to mmsc.church, or you can get and see the scroll itself and sign up, or you can view it. I guess if you get a copy of it, ask for a copy of it, email whatever the email is, and Larry will send you a free copy. Just have a look at it. It's a 16, 18 page newsletter, and it's just amazing, absolutely amazing.
mm,
So that's the idea of consciousness in various levels. The higher you go, the more enlightened you become. Like I say, there it is. It's an amazing letter, and it has about 18 pages on it, and it has all kinds of wonderful
Yeah,
uh,
good reading. Very good reading.
articles.
Yeah. Mm.
So maybe Jack can pull up the or put in the chat the sign up for where people can subscribe to that.
Hmm.
So listen, it's been wonderful. Any other questions out there?
No, Doug, you did a great job. For our listening audience, basically, thank you for watching our videos, and please subscribe if you so you don't miss any of our updates. Doug, you want to close out the show?
Well, I will do it. It's great to be with you again tonight, Les, and to Jack, who's the wizard behind the scenes producing the show. Hey, everybody, you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, as we know, at Douglas James Cottrell and at The Soul Report. Please feel free to share this episode with someone you care about and help us grow this global community of truth seekers and soul explorers. So remember, this podcast is a movement of consciousness, a call to awaken the divine within. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep listening to the voice of your soul. I'm Dr. Douglas James Cottrell with my good friend and co-host Les Hubert and Jack Balick, who's producing the show. We'll be right back here next week, same time. Take care and God bless. Peace and prosperity.
Good night, everybody.